Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of a philosopher you might not know but should, and that's Paul of Venice. 14th and 15th century philosophy, we're talking logic, metaphysics, the whole thing.
A philosopher's philosopher, really. Dense work, but worth it, I promise.
That's what we do here, right? We'll break down his ideas, even if you're not a medieval scholar or anything. And get this, Paul had some pretty cool ideas about like how we even know things, even individual people.
Yeah, he was a realist. That means he believed in a world that exists, like, outside of our minds. But unlike other realists, he thought we could know individual things, not just those general concepts. We'll get to that, but it's different for his time.
Okay, so unpack this for us. First, like, who was this Paul of Venice guy? Give us the quick version.
Born in Italy, 1369, joined the Augustinians, studied in Padua, even Oxford. A well-traveled scholar, for sure. Doctorate in arts and theology, taught all over Italy, wrote a ton commentaries on Aristotle, his own Logica Magna, and a lot more.
Not just some monk in a corner, then. This guy was, like, a big deal. What made him stand out, though? Was he just repeating Aristotle? Or did he bring something new?
Paul was an original thinker. He took the best, from the big names, Duns Scotus, Thomas Aquinas, even his rivals, the nominalists, and kind of, like, made his own system out of it, wasn't afraid to debate and go his own way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But before we go too deep, what were Paul of Venice's big ideas? What was he trying to answer?
Well, his work covers a lot: logic, semantics, ontology, body and soul, all of that. But one concept is, like, central: the formal distinction.
Formal distinction, huh?
Yeah.
Sounds a little technical. Do I need a philosophy degree for that?
No, not at all. It's a surprisingly intuitive idea, honestly. Imagine an apple. It's red, it's round, it's sweet, all at the same time. Those are different, right? You wouldn't say redness is roundness, but they all exist together in, like, one substance, the apple. Formal, distinct, real differences, but in a unified whole.
So it's not that, like, these properties are totally separate things, but they're not, like, just different names for the exact same thing. It's a distinction within the thing itself.
Precisely. Distinct but united. And Paul uses this everywhere: essence and being, universals and individuals, even aspects of God.
Okay, that's a powerful tool. It's like he's saying the world is, like, full of these subtle distinctions, and we got to pay attention to those if we want to understand how things really are. It's not so black and white.
No, not at all. And this attention to detail, this precise thinking, is what makes Paul so challenging but rewarding to study.
Okay, so formal distinction is our foundation. Now let's build on it. What other big ideas was Paul known for?
How about logic? But not the dry kind you might be thinking of. For Paul, logic, it was the key to, like, unlocking the structure of reality itself.
So not just winning arguments, right? He saw logic as something much, much deeper.
Right. It was about understanding how our minds, like, grasp those relationships between things, how we make sense of the world. It's not just about arguments being valid. It's about, like, the very architecture of reality.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. So how did he actually use logic? What did he focus on?
One area was predication. That's how we link subjects and predicates in sentences. The apple is red. Seems simple, right? But Paul would say, wait, what do you mean by is?
This is where it gets interesting. I can feel it.
Right. He broke down those different types of predication. There's, like, identical predication. Subject and predicate are the exact same thing. And then there's formal predication. The predicate, it expresses a property that's true of the subject because of its form, its essence.
So the apple is red is, like, identical. It's talking about that specific apple, but all apples are fruits is formal, right? Because, like, being a fruit is part of what it means to be an apple. It's in the definition.
You got it. And Paul thought this was crucial for clear thinking. He even had this huge debate with another big thinker, Gregory of Rimini, and their whole argument was about the nature of reality based on how sentences work.
Wait, so philosophical debates about reality based on grammar? That's wild.
It shows how deeply they thought about language and logic. They saw it as, like, a window into being. Philosophy wasn't just a game. It was about, like, the deepest questions.
So how we use language for Paul, it reveals something about the world itself.
Yeah.
I like that. Makes you think twice about every word. So where does this lead us?
It leads to semantics, which is all about meaning. And Paul, he was, like, obsessed with what sentences really mean and when they're true,
So not just throwing words around. He wanted precision.
Absolutely. He wanted to ground meaning in the actual things sentences refer to. A staunch realist, he believed words, thoughts, They correspond to real things out there.
No abstract concepts just floating around, that everything had to be like anchored to something concrete.
Exactly. Building a philosophy rooted in the real world, made up of individuals and essences and substances and accidents, all meticulously categorized and related through his formal distinction.
It's all starting to fit together. Formal distinction, logic that focus on grounding meaning and reality at all points to, like this really rigorous, systematic way of thinking.
Yeah.
The guy was a philosophical architect.
He really was. And speaking of architecture, that brings us to another cornerstone. Ontology.
Ontology. Now, there's a word that can make anyone's eyes glaze over. Remind me what that's all about.
Ontology. It's the study of being itself, of existence.
Yeah.
It asks what is there and what's the nature of reality. Big questions.
You biggest. And Paul of Venice's answers were?
He was, like Aristotle, a realist, believed in a world of real individual things that exist outside our minds, but he also believed in universals.
Universals. Those general concepts like humanity or redness, things that seem to exist like beyond any one person or red object.
Exactly. And this was a big point of disagreement with his rivals, the nominalists. They thought universals were just names we give to groups of similar things.
Right. They say humanity doesn't exist, it's just a label. But Paul didn't agree.
Not at all. He argued universals are real, and we need them to explain how we can have knowledge. If there's no humanity, how can we say Socrates is a human?
So how did he reconcile those two things? How can there be humanity and individual humans walking around?
Well, you guessed it. He used the formal distinction. Universals and individuals, they're the same thing, but seen from different perspectives. It's like humanity is the blueprint, and each person is a building made from that blueprint. Unique, but sharing that common essence.
So there's humanity, the universal essence, and then there's me, a particular instance of it, both real but in different ways.
Precisely. And Paul saw reality as having these different levels of being. The individual, the temporal, the essential, and this overarching real being, which encompasses everything, complex. But it let him create a nuanced picture of reality where universals and individuals could coexist.
That's pretty mind-bending.
Yeah.
I'm getting a glimpse into how Paul of Venice's mind worked, and it was a busy place. All those levels and distinctions and connections.
A master at weaving together seemingly disparate threads of thought.
Speaking of weaving things together, how about we move to something a little more concrete? What about his ideas on the body and soul? Always a fun topic.
It is. And this is where you see his blend of Aristotelian and Augustinian influences.
Oh, pulling from both those giants.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
When it came to the soul, Paul was firmly on Team Aristotle. He rejected the Augustinian idea that the soul is separate or just using the body. For Paul, the soul is the form of the body.
So the soul isn't just in the body, it's what makes it a body in the first place. It's like the organizing principle, giving it shape and function.
Exactly. Imagine the soul as like the blueprint, shaping and animating your body, making it you. Fits with his realism, right?
Yeah.
The soul is real, it's inseparable from the body, not some ethereal ghost.
I see the Aristotle there. But where's Augustine come in?
Well, Paul did agree with Augustine that the soul is immortal. Aristotle thought the soul died with the body, but Paul believed it could survive on its own.
So he takes the Aristotelian idea of soul as form and adds the Augustinian belief in immortality, a philosophical mashup.
A very sophisticated one. And it gets even more interesting when you see how this connects to his theory of knowledge, how we learn and understand. He had some very, very unique ideas about that.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the Paul of Venice take on knowledge.
He built on that classic Aristotelian model. Active and passive intellect, but with some twists. Like many thinkers then, Paul believed our senses, they give us raw data about the world, but it's the intellect that interprets that data and lets us grasp the essence of things.
So we need both senses and intellect to really know something. Can't just rely on what we see or hear. We need our minds to make sense of it all.
Right. But here's where Paul gets innovative. He believed we can directly know individual things, not just those general concepts.
Wait, really? And so I can know this apple, not just the concept of apple. That's different from what a lot of philosophers were saying back then, right?
It is. Most realists thought we only knew universals and then had trouble explaining how we could know individual things. Paul said, no, our minds, they grasp that unique thisness of each thing. We don't need to, do mental gymnastics. We just know it.
That's a game changer. And it makes him really stand out.
He was never afraid to challenge what everyone else is saying, took the best of what came before, but always, with a critical eye, adding his own insights.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Formal, distinct logics, semantics, ontology, even peeked into his body and soul ideas. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. This guy was a deep thinker.
We have a lot more to unpack. Divine ideas, potency and act, prime matter. These are all crucial pieces.
Well, I guess we'll have to save that for next time. This has been a real workout for the brain, but a good one.
Yeah.
Paul of Venice, a philosopher worth knowing.
Absolutely. He makes us think deeply about the world and our place in it.
All right, that's it for part 1 of our deep dive into Paul of Venice. Join us next time as we delve even deeper into his fascinating world.
Picking up where we left off, let's look at one of Paul of Venice's more theological ideas, his concept of divine ideas.
Divine ideas. Okay, intrigued but lost already. Walk me through this.
Sure. It's about, well, how God, as the creator, relates to his creation, right? Did God have a blueprint? For Paul and a lot of medieval thinkers, the answer was like a big yes.
So these divine ideas, they're God's master plan. The cosmic blueprint for everything.
That's a good way to put it. Paul saw these divine ideas as like the archetypes, the perfect forms of all things. And here's the key. They're not just like thoughts in God's mind. They're part of his very essence.
Whoa, okay. So it's like God's mind, it contains all the possibilities right from the start, and creation is him choosing which ones to make real.
Exactly. Paul would say those divine ideas, they're the ultimate reason why things are the way they are. They're the models God used to shape the world, the source of all order.
I get that, the appeal, but doesn't that raise questions about free will? If God had a blueprint, did he have to create things exactly this way? Where's the room for choice? God's choice, our choice?
Those are the very questions Paul wrestled with. He was careful to avoid, determinism, the idea that everything's like preordained, no real freedom. He insisted that God created freely, out of love, even though he had these eternal ideas within himself.
So how did he square that? How can God have a plan but still create freely? It seems like one or the other,
Well, Paul made a distinction between God's understanding of what's possible and his will to create, certain things and not others. God knows all the possibilities, but he chooses which to make real. Think of an architect. Plans for tons of buildings, but they don't have to build all of them.
So divine ideas, like the architect's plans representing potential, and God's act of creation, that's what makes it real.
Right. And this leads us to another big concept in Paul's work, the distinction between potency and act.
Potency and act. Okay, what's the difference? Lay it on me.
It's about change and possibility. Potency is the potential for something to be or to become something else. Act is, well, it's the realization of that potential when a possibility becomes real.
So like an acorn has the potency to become an oak tree, and when it actually grows, that's the act.
Perfect example. Paul saw the whole universe this way, this dynamic interplay of potency and act, things changing, evolving, possibilities becoming realities. He got this from Aristotle, but like always, added his own spin.
It wouldn't be Paul of Venice if he wasn't adding his own spin to things. So what was his unique take on potency and act?
Well, his view was all about preformation. The idea that what comes to be, it was already there potentially, like a blueprint inside the thing itself. So the acorn doesn't just have the possibility of becoming an oak tree. It contains the oak tree, but in a virtual potential form.
Oh, hold on. So he's saying it's not just that it could become an oak tree, but that the oak tree is like already there, just waiting to unfold.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical idea, and it might sound deterministic, but Paul was careful to leave space for contingency and free will.
Okay, how does that work? How can everything be like preformed, but we still have free will? Seems like those two don't go together.
He argued that while the potential of something might be fixed, the ways it becomes real, that's not fixed. So acorn's potential to be an oak, that's set. But the exact shape of the tree, how tall it gets, whether it gets hit by lightning or lives a long time, those depend on a lot of things, including maybe human actions.
So there's this preset potential, but how it plays out, that's open to influence, to chance, to our choices. Yeah. It's like we're working with the script, but we can improvise our lines.
I like that. Paul was trying to balance, order and freedom, acknowledge that structure of the universe, but without denying, chance and choice.
Okay, I see how it fits in, like that formal distinction again, right? Finding unity within diversity, order within chaos. But all this pre-formation stuff makes me wonder about the stuff of things. Did Paul have anything to say about matter itself?
He did, and this is where we get to prime matter.
Prime matter sounds like straight out of a philosophy textbook. What is that exactly?
It's the ultimate building material, the formless stuff that underlies everything physical. Aristotle described it as pure potentiality, no qualities of its own, like the clay a sculptor uses. It can be anything, but isn't anything specific on its own.
The raw material, the blank slate.
Exactly. But Paul, he added his own twist. He saw it as having these innate dispositions, potentialities. He called them rationes seminales.
Rationes seminales. Okay, that's a mouthful. What are those?
Imagine this. Prime matter, it's not completely passive, It has these tendencies, these inclinations, like a seed that's programmed to grow into a certain plant.
So the acorn's potential to be an oak, it's not just like a random possibility. It's built into the acorn itself, like a blueprint in the material.
That's it. Those rationes seminales, those seed-like things, they're in prime matter from the start. They're the seeds of all the forms that can exist, just waiting, like saying the universe is pregnant with possibilities, and those are already written into reality itself.
Wow, that's a lot. It's like Paul is saying everything that could be, it's already there potentially in this prime matter. Very, very deterministic sounding.
It does have that flavor, but again, Paul was careful to emphasize contingency and free will.
Okay, how does he get around that? If everything's already there in the rationes seminales, how is there free will?
He says that while the potential might be fixed, the specific ways it becomes real, that's not. So yes, the acorn has oak potential, but whether it actually becomes an oak tree, what kind of oak tree, that depends on a lot of stuff, a lot of which is outside any plan.
It's like the rationes seminales, they set the stage, they provide the options, but the actual play, that's influenced by chance, environment, maybe even our choices.
Exactly. Paul was looking for that middle ground, between determinism and just randomness, seeing the order of the universe, but also that unpredictable stuff. It's a tough balance, and I don't know if even Paul totally pulled it off.
Sounds about right for philosophy. Always more questions than answers, but that's what makes it fun, I guess. This constant search, trying to understand these big mysteries.
And Paul of Venice, he was a master at that. He tackled those big questions and came up with some really innovative answers.
He did, and we've just started to explore his world.
Yeah.
So much more to unpack, to think about.
There is. But I think we need a moment to let it all sink in. This is heavy stuff. It takes time to digest.
Agreed. Let's take a break, gather our thoughts, and come back refreshed for the final part of our deep dive into Paul of Venice. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Paul of Venice.
Ready to wrap things up with this fascinating philosopher.
Yeah, me too. We've covered so much. His formal distinction, his whole approach to logic, divine ideas, potency and act, even prime matter with those rationes seminales.
It's been a whirlwind, hasn't it? Through some pretty complex stuff.
It really has. But I think we've managed to make some sense of what made Paul of Venice so unique as a thinker, right?
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't just repeating the old ideas. He was taking them, pushing them, coming up with his own solutions to these age-old problems.
So what would you say is like the key takeaway for our listeners?
Yeah.
What's the one thing that really makes Paul of Venice, stand out?
For me, it's that blend of realism, but also this focus on individuals.
That's interesting. You're right. There's this tension running through his work. He's committed to realism,
Yeah.
He believes in a world with objective truths, universal essences.
Right, but he never loses sight of the individual, the concrete, the specific thisness of every single thing.
Like he's bridging the gap between the abstract and the concrete, the universal and the individual.
And that's where the formal distinction comes in, right? That's the tool that lets him hold those two seemingly opposite ideas and see how they're both separate but also connected.
Exactly. Formal distinction. It's the key to Paul's whole system. It shows us how he can say universals are real, but but individuals still matter.
And I think this focus on the individual, it's why Paul is still relevant today. In a world that's, obsessed with categories and putting everyone in boxes, Paul reminds us that each thing, each person is unique and important.
Yeah, he pushes back against that tendency to reduce everything to just abstract ideas. He wants us to see the world in all its messy, specific details.
He's a philosopher who helps us appreciate, the richness and the diversity of everything that exists, to resist that urge to oversimplify.
That's beautifully put. Now, before we go, I always like to leave our listeners with a question, something to think about, as they keep exploring.
It's a good tradition. Let's do that.
So, taking inspiration from Paul of Venice, what's a question we can leave everyone with today?
Well, if Paul is right and our minds can grasp individual things, not just, general concepts, what does that say about how we connect to the world? Are we more intertwined with reality than we think?
That's a great question. It gets to the heart of what makes Paul's philosophy so interesting. It suggests there's this deeper connection, this more intimate relationship between us and the things we experience.
It makes us, rethink our assumptions about how we see the world, how we interact with it. Maybe knowledge isn't just about, abstract ideas, but about this direct, immediate engagement with all the richness of reality.
I think that's a perfect note to end on, this sense of wonder, of possibility that Paul of Venice opens up for us. So to our listeners, we encourage you to share your thoughts, your questions, anything you discovered while exploring Paul of Venice. And until next time, keep diving deep.